how to make an energy ball just like this. I'm going to show you how you can make an energy ball like this in Blender. You can use this effect for lots of things. For example, giving yourself superpowers, but also if you want to create some kind of surreal environment. And now let's jump into Blender so I can show you how you can do that too, very easily. So here we are in Blender 4.3, but any Blender version should do. So the first thing I do is either you delete your default cube or delete whatever you have in your scene. You don't need that, but let's keep our camera and bring it somewhere like here on the horizon line, so our origin point is right in the center. Now we need a few objects, 3 objects. We're gonna start with an icosphere. For that, hold Shift A and go to Mesh. There we go, Mesh and icosphere. Now this one has too many polygons. Okay, let's just keep it on default and see what happens. If it's too many, we can make another one. So what we need is we want to only show the edges of this icosphere. So you can see this icosphere has lots of edges and also lots of faces. We want to delete all the faces and keep the edges. And the way we're going to do that, let's go back to object mode. I'm going to go here on the modifiers on the right, add a modifier and look for wireframe. As you can see, the wireframe modifier basically does just that. It removes all the faces but keeps the edges, and that's the base of our effect here. Under the settings here, we can adjust the thickness, and we were gonna do that in about a minute, but for now let's just keep it around that. The next object we need is a light, and first I'm just gonna switch to cycles. On my viewport shading, this is cycles. You can see I'm rendering in cycles, and as you can see, it's completely dark through the camera. We don't see anything. That's why we need a light. So Shift A, light, and we're gonna use a point light. Now we can see already something is happening. Obviously it's not the desired effect, but if I go on my light settings, I just increase this number by a lot. Let's go with 1000 for now. So it is somewhat glowing now, but not really. So what we need in order to get those nice light beams is we need haze, because without haze nothing around here will be illuminated, just like in space. So we need some atmosphere. The way we're going to do that is, again, Shift A, Mesh, and add our third object. It's a cube. Now let's make this cube massive. Let's just make it as big as necessary. And every time you adjust some scale, always hit Control A and apply the scale. Now I have my shader editor here on the left. If you don't have it, click up here on shading. But we need to give our box, my cube here, let's call it volume cube. We need to give it a material. Let's call the material volume. And now in my material settings here, I'm going to delete the principled BSDF, hold Shift A, and we're going to look for principled volume. There it is. We're going to plug this into not the surface but the volume, and now something very interesting is happening. We can see that there is light in there, but the light is just not strong enough, because what we're trying to achieve here is giving ourselves some God rays. And to make that more visible, I'm going to go my point light. I'm going to increase the strength by a lot. Let's do times 10, and we're gonna get closer here. Let's do times 10 again. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now I can go back to my icosphere on the modifier settings and play with my thickness here. And that's really depending on you, how you want it, how thick those light streaks you want to have. Let's go with something like that. So when I rotate this with R, I can rotate it, then it kind of looks like a disco ball. Now one more thing is important, because I don't want to show the black streaks here. I want this to basically be transparent. So I'm going to go on my object, the object settings, and go under visibility and basically turn everything off besides the shadow. So I basically don't see the icosphere itself anymore, just the light streaks. And now when I rotate this, you can see it has a very cool effect. Now when I play this just like that, nothing is happening and it is a little boring. So what we're gonna do is, I want to add or animate the rotation and the scale of this. So first I'm just gonna bring it to a smaller scale, something like that. Apply the scale. You might need to adjust the modifier wireframe thickness a little so it basically looks the way you want it again. If you adjust the scale, there you go, something like that. That looks pretty cool. Now I want to animate the scale, or rather give it a little jitter, a little wiggle. So the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to go under my item, scale, hover over the scale, hit I on my keyboard. Now I created a keyframe, and what I'm going to do now is just going to select one of them, scale the x-axis for example, go on my modifiers down here, my graph editor, add modifier and hit noise. You might be able to see what's happening now is basically on my x-axis is just jitters up and down, which is cool, but I want it to be a little slower, so I'm going to increase the scale so it basically just goes up and down a little slower. It's still too fast, but that's really up to you the way you want it. If it goes too much, then just decrease the strength of it, so it's just a little less, a little more subtle. So find your personal number, whatever you like, which is, this is fine for me. Now I also have to add the same modifier to my y and z axis so I can copy it. So I'm going to go up here, copy F modifiers, and now I'm going to click on y and hit paste modifier, on z paste modifier. Now I copied that on all of the axes, like x scale, y scale and z scale. Now that kind of removes the effect, which is okay. It still makes this ball growing and shrinking. Now I'm going to do something similar. I'm not sure if I'm going to use a modifier for that or just going to animate it. Let's just try to animate it first and see if we like it. So I'm going to hover over rotation, hit I on the very first frame, make sure. And now I'm going to go to my last frame. Let's say it's 250 and crank this a little. Let's do 134, 134 and 134. Now hover over rotation again and hit I. Now we created two keyframes. We can see it right here. It goes from here to here. Now I don't want it to ease in or ease out, so I hit A on my keyboard to select all my keyframes, hit T, and now click on linear. Now it makes it linear and it's not easing from one to another. So now I have a little rotation, and if that's not fast enough, I'll just grab all of my rotation keyframes. I'm just going to mute my scale keyframe so I only see one. So if I want it to be faster, I just grab the last keyframes, hit G, Y, and just bring it up as much as I need, and now it's going to move faster. But really this is up to you. If you want it to be fast, then just bring it up by a lot. And now it's going to be moving faster depending on what you want. And I think for this one this is what I'm going with, something like that. Now we can zoom out a little, camera a little, just like so it blends in the edges, just like that. And we still can, let's say, play with our light settings. We can give it a different color, but this is not really necessary. If you give yourself superpowers, then you can always adjust it in a color grade. You can just give it a different color, because right now it's white, which is fine. Yeah, but you can adjust this later on. Just adjust the hue of your magic ball the way you want. Now to export this, go on your output settings. I can just make it square, because square would be good enough, because then you can just place it on your hand or wherever you want it in your scenes. Then just make sure to hit go on your output settings here and find a folder where you want to render to. Now you can render in RGBA as a PNG sequence, which I would recommend, but if you don't want to, you can also do a JPEG and then RGB. But then just make sure in compositing, because you're gonna have a black background, which is not a big problem with stuff like that. Just when you composite that, make sure the screening mode is on either add or screen, so it just removes all the blacks and just makes the white pop. And then again, you can adjust the hue and saturation if you want to make it a different color. And like I said, you can use that either to give yourself magical powers, but also to make like some kind of surreal environment just like this. And of course, you can be more creative with that, because we just used a random icosphere, but you can make all kinds of weird models and shapes and put a light in there. Make sure to have a volume box around it, and then you can get very cool effects. So guys, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below, and see you in the next video. Toodaloo.